Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Titans of Foodservice podcast. I'm coming at you with episode number 19. Today, I welcome Andrea Todd. Andrea is the Culinary Business Development Director in Foodservice for Dessert Holdings. Dessert Holdings, they've got a few different brands from Atalanta Cheesecake to the Original Cakery to Lawler's Cheesecakes to most recently Diane's Fine Desserts. So we're going to jump into everything dessert, what it takes to become the lead culinary salesperson at a food service manufacturer. And I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this. So thank you for joining me here on episode 19. Let's go ahead and welcome Andrea. Andrea, thank you so much for joining me here on the Titans of Foodservice podcast. I've been really looking forward to our conversation. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So I want to know all about your journey here in food service, how you got in and the steps kind of along the way to get to where you are today. So why don't we start from the very beginning of how did you get into the food industry?
You know, I fell into this amazing industry when I finished my undergrad, which was in business and a minor in art. I'm sure not many people say that, but I always wanted an element of creativity to, my life, and an art minor was the way to get that, while, having a business background that I knew would, suit me well throughout my career. So I graduated in 2007, right into a recession. So jobs were hard to get. And I actually moved back home, and there was a bakery for sale in my hometown. And my mom and I decided on a whim that we should just go ahead and buy this bakery. I grew up with mom and grandma who were very much, home bakers and home cooks. And it's always been a thing of passion and a way to show your love. So I don't know. I mean, it just kind of happened, and we just signed on and bought this bakery. And I think the owner gave us about a week of training. And then I basically taught myself how to decorate cakes, and off we went headfirst into this venture that neither of us had really a ton of experience in before that. So it was definitely, getting in the trenches and learning on the fly. So, so that was kind of my first entrance into the food world. Of course, I'd been a server and things like that, through college. So the restaurant life is always something that has had a calling for me.
And where'd you go to college?
Yeah, I went to Chadron State College, which is in Nebraska. And then, eventually after the bakery, pursuit, I ended up going back and getting a baking and pastry certificate from Auguste Escoffier in Boulder, Colorado. So eventually realized this is what I really want to do for my career, and have since gone off and gotten my master's from the Culinary Institute of America. So I think we're in the food service world for a while now.
Definitely. When you and your mom found the bakery and purchased that, had you ever personally baked yourself growing up, or was this all brand new to you?
Yeah, definitely had been, baking at home, and, I don't know if you know 4-H, but my Nebraska is showing here where, you kind of enter into essentially kind of like a state fair type of thing, and you can, put in your muffin recipe or whatever. So definitely have been a baker for, most of my life, but through, going to pastry school and things like that, realized that this is, the life that I enjoy, and it's perfect for perfectionist type people like myself.
Yes. Yes. My wife growing up, she was big into baking. And so she's done some wedding cakes, all just kind of more passion projects, but wedding cakes and birthday cakes. And so I know a little bit about on the baking side because she still loves to do it. And every year for like the holidays, her and her mom and sister will get together and they'll do a big baking day. And so I reap the benefits of that for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm always so impressed by what she can make.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And it is true. You have to find lots of people who are willing to partake in your desserts. It's always a little harder after the first of the year. People are always like, oh no, I'm on a cleanse or whatever. So yeah, it does come with perks if you're willing to, have some calories.
That's a good point. We are also big consumers of on the Food Network. You have the baking championships. There's the Halloween version. I think there's the Christmas version. We like those as well. And then she's also watched the British Baking Championship. I don't know if that's maybe on Netflix, but I don't know if you've seen those yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I know my sister-in-law is a huge fan of the British Bake Off. And so I hear all sorts of feedback about it. It sounds like they do some fun classes as well that you can like sign up and bake with the pros. So maybe those are some longer term goals for me.
Totally. Yeah, that would be really cool. When you and your mom started at the bakery, how did you know the business was for sale?
I'm from a very small town, so It is like that's where you got your graduation cakes from. And that's like, if you had a birthday, that's where you went. Right. So everybody knew Cakes by Connie was the name of it before. And so you would, I think honestly, it was like the realtor who, of course, like had worked for my parents at one point in time. And so, it's a very small place where everyone is always chatting.
What's the name of the town?
Alliance, Nebraska.
Alliance, Nebraska. I have to say I've never heard of Alliance, Nebraska before.
Yeah, it's home of Carhenge, which is like a creative version of a Stonehenge made of old cars, and it's on the way to like Mount Rushmore, or if you were going to go to Sturgis or something. So it's kind of a drive-through kind of place, but yeah, there's a few kitschy things there as well.
Nice. And do you and your mom still own and operate the bakery?
We don't. We kind of took our learnings, and she actually went back to school and got her master's in counseling, and I went off to pastry school, and we took that as our, okay, that was an interesting entrance into the food service world, and I don't think it was her dream, but it was a really great experience for us both.
What were some of the learnings that you had through that process? Maybe it's personal or professional.
I think I would do 100 things differently now if I opened something today. Just from the way that you can organize yourself to mass produce things a little bit more ahead of time versus always doing everything one by one. I think honestly, one of the biggest learnings is just, ensuring that you are able to sell your product for what will be meaningful to you from, the amount of work you're putting into it, as well as making sure that it, covers your cost of goods and gives you some money in the end as well. So I think those are big things where the baking world can be really tough because it comes with a ton of labor and detail and time that sometimes I don't think is always appreciated. So I think how you market that is really important to, make sure that consumers are appreciating the amount of work or the ingredients that you're using.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could imagine it would be hard to cost out. You could get your raw materials, the ingredients to make the finished product, but your time itself, how do you calculate that and have it make sense to the end consumer? That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had a challenge with producing the products ahead of time? A lot of times would it become someone would come in, order, and then you'd make it?
Yeah. And just, I would say like, it's things that you learn through the course of working in this industry of, what you can do ahead of time, like making batters ahead of time and letting those, potentially be ready to bake off versus, always just making everything that day. There are ways to kind of make some things hold a little longer so that it's easier for you to mass produce and stuff like that.
Right. So from there, you went back to get your culinary degree. And what was the next step after you received your degree?
Yeah, lots of restaurants, hotel, catering, smaller bakeries, and moved around a ton. I lived in Denver and then to Phoenix and Chicago, and just felt like I got a ton of experience, working, like I said, for some smaller independently owned places as well as, a massive hotel chain as well. So some of those I, again, would never do again. But it was good experience, and it's always helpful to have that hands-on, especially in the role I'm in today. It does give you a lot of insight. So.
Yeah, no, I believe that. Working in restaurants, hotels, on the bakery side, what does someone's day-to-day life look like in that role?
Early.
Early days.
Yeah. I at one point, I think I was going to work at like 3:00 in the morning most days, or then, taking one shift as the baker, a week. That would be, so it'd be like, go to work at 3 a.m., 4 days a week. And then on your fifth day, go in at 11 p.m. and do the baking. And so like very, very tough hours, long days, 12 plus hour days. But it does come with like a huge sense of accomplishment at the end of every day where, you go in and you have, whatever, you have to make 1,000 cupcakes, but then when you're done, you're done. It comes with, this beautiful product that you have that you can see and appreciate all the hard work that you've put in for that day. So it does come, with that, but, yeah, then you're ready, to put your feet up at the end of the day for sure.
I mean, 12 hours, getting there at 3 a.m., working 12 hours, that's a long shift, long time to be on your feet as well. Definitely being in the food service industry, chefs or pastry chefs or whoever it may be, it's a long time on your feet, and people don't necessarily understand that. And that could be draining. There's been days, I have a desk job, and I also go out and make sales calls, probably similar to what you do now.
Yeah.
And there's days where I'm like, I'm going to put my computer up taller and I could do calls, virtual calls from standing up. And after an hour or two, like my feet are,
oh yeah,
getting tired.
Totally.
So I can't imagine doing 12 hours.
I know,
every day that way.
Your body gets used to it, but, yeah, you do fall out of shape for it. I was in a operator kitchen last week running around, and you realize what you've lost.
Right. So you go from the restaurants and the hotels, moving around to different cities. How did you get into the manufacturing side of the business?
Honestly, it was a moment of like, I can't do this forever.
Right.
The hours are grueling, and, the pay is often not that great. And so you're kind of forced into, what are my options? Luckily, as I said, I had a background in business, so that really did give me probably the leg up I needed to exit into the other side of the industry. But I started working through an agency called CSSI in Chicago. Yeah. And they, basically you have chefs that help food manufacturers go out and sell. So, you sell everything, right? I wasn't just a pastry chef. I was selling, gyro meat or yogurt or, dehydrated butter or, in the end, I did, work with one of, the companies that I work for now and, worked for the original cakery. So it's like you do, a ton of different things, right? And it really teaches you, how to balance your time and how to change thinking. And, you go from being on the bench and developing some recipes to creating a presentation deck and going out and helping sell that product. So it was definitely the jump start to be on the food manufacturing side of things.
Yeah, for sure. When you were at CSSI, well, first, I guess CSSI, the way it works from what you've kind of described is, let's say a food manufacturer can contract out with CSSI, and then they pair that manufacturer with culinary professionals, and then they can go out and make sales calls together. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Kind of it's almost like to have a trained person on the culinary side. The salesperson might have the relationship, and then you have the culinary side, and it's actually a nice pair together.
Yeah, exactly.
When you were at CSSI, did they, to go from, being a baker onto the sales side, did they give you formal training, or was it really, here's the products, go out and sell?
I would say, there was definitely learning via, your mentors and peers at the company. We did some things as far as, learning about your personalities and kind of what your style would be, and how that could potentially, work for you. But yeah, it definitely, as all things in the food industry, a lot of it is get in the deep end and go. Mm-hmm. So, I don't recall a ton of this is your sales training. It's more of, I think a lot of it is built around how you are as networking and relationship building, and, tying back to, my upbringing, right? When you come from somewhere where everyone, it just, I would say it kind of sets you up to know how important a network is, right? And my parents were entrepreneurs, so you do realize how much those relationships matter. So I would say that's probably a big part of kind of how the sales side of it became successful, is just through, the relationship building side of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you are out making a presentation to a customer, are there times where you feel that maybe they're looking for a specific item and you can build a new product or create a new product for a specific customer? And how does that process look?
Yeah, as far as, if in my life today, if I'm with a customer and they want to create something new, it definitely is always a conversation with the greater business of, does that fit into our goals? Do we have, all the equipment to make that come to life? And then basically my job would be then to create a way to make it happen. So if there are guardrails that maybe we can't cross, how do we get creative and figure out, well, here's a substitution, we could do this, but not this. And, maybe it goes from being, a 6-layer cake to a 4-layer cake, or, you kind of have to kind of make it work so that it works in mass. But yeah, it's definitely a collaborative process between the customer, the end user, and then, the team at the manufacturing facility and how that could actually come to life. So I'm kind of the go-between on, taking the creative side and trying to remember to not lose that, because sometimes I think the guardrails can start to make you feel like you're not having as much fun. but still get to a place that everybody's really excited about the product.
Right. That makes sense. I recently had somebody on. She was the founder of a food trend company, and she was talking about different food trends. Specifically, I was asking her food service questions, and she mentioned, if you look at COVID during the pandemic, a lot of people were at home, kind of cooped up. Maybe they became a in-home baker. I know we represent a yeast company. I remember the demand for yeast was insane.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of in-home bakers, but now that we've come out of the pandemic, the dynamic, the trend has really shifted. Back then it was drive-throughs were popular, fast casual was popular, but now people want to get out and they want to be she said, in loud places, or that's a bar or a restaurant or a place where kids can go. And I'm sure desserts, and I play a huge part in that. Are there food trends that you follow, or are there ones that may be upcoming that you're trying to create new products around?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's great, right? This place we are right now where we have access to so much, right? Google tells you 1,000 things, right? You can go on Eater or Thrillist and go on your Instagram and, there's just tons and tons of available options to help you get creative and research. I would say, some flavor profiles that are kind of fun and interesting, especially in terms of dessert, are like ube. So like the purple, sweet potato, purple yam, the dragon fruit right now. I mean, things that have color are super exciting because, dessert can really be pretty brown sometimes. So how do you make a pop with some color and really drive some interest? As to your point, right? More people are coming in and they're sitting down again. So how do you attract people's attention as something, is on a plate as it comes through? If it's purple and has cotton candy on it or something, like that's grabbing everybody's attention. And then it's, getting people that weren't going to order dessert to, what's that? Let me have that too. Right. So,
right.
I think those eye-catching colors are something that we talk about a lot right now, as far as, trends to kind of keep in mind as we build out new product.
Yeah, for sure. Ube, I've heard of that before. Where does that come from?
It's a South American derived.
Oh, interesting. I have seen it before. As you mentioned, it's purple, and and same thing with dragon fruit, which I believe is pink.
Yes,
it is very
pink.
eye-catching. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember one time I did a training. It was a drink mix that we had. It was a drink mix for cocktails. Okay. And one of the recipes that they gave, or one of the selling tactics that they taught us, was if a restaurant could get like a big glass and fill up the drink mix, and it's a bright color, and you can add in dry ice and walk it across the restaurant. You can give away. There's some restaurants that took on this idea, like you can give it away for free, and everybody else in that restaurant says, "Wow, look at that drink! I have to have one of those. That's really cool looking." So I understand with the colors, that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And dry ice, anything that smokes or whatever, obviously, something
for
like
sure.
that could be really fun.
Coming out of COVID, what do you think is the future of the dessert industry? How's it going to look different into the future?
I think some things that are really seem to be top of mind right now are still more individual size desserts where, pre-COVID, we were really big into the super shareable, everybody get a fork in there. I think that's coming back a little bit as we continue to celebrate more, but those individual offerings, whether they're, a little bit for me and a little bit for you, or something that is sealed and just easy to be portable as you're, back to traveling and on the go a little bit more. But I think it is definitely, it is different than it was. I think we have to be prepared for a little bit of the shareable, and then some of these that are a bit more just for me, to kind of substitute that as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Have you had any interesting or surprising lessons that you've learned in the last few years coming out of COVID? I ask people a lot of times questions about COVID because especially on the food service side, there's been such drastic changes on consumer trends and just the restaurant segments that are now booming or maybe falling in favor. What are some of the surprising lessons that you've maybe learned over the last few years?
I think transparency is really huge right now.
Okay.
And it probably should have always been, but I do think that I find there's more of an open dialogue now that's happening, especially between, manufacturers and operators. What are my challenges? Am I short on something, ingredient wise? And does, the operator have a lead to help get that ingredient in faster? Do we, maybe have, some hurdles that we need to work through together to make sure that, everything stays in supply and things like that. We all experienced, the massive delays that happened from, those tankers just like stuck out in the ocean for a while there, right? And so just how do we become more transparent among each other and collaborate to find a solution? I know I have a lot of chef friends who have spent tons of time in the last year looking at different specs of protein and, trying to find a solution, things like that. So anything that I think we can do to help our operator partners, and then vice versa, make sure that, we're all in it together, basically, I think is probably my biggest learning, where, the food service industry is like a family anyway. So, how do we make sure everybody's successful and prepared as much as we can be?
Right. And in your day-to-day, you're traveling around quite a bit throughout the country. International a little bit too?
Yeah, I support our sales team in the US and Canada. So okay. I'm all over, just week by week, different part of the country. It's pretty fun.
In the food industry, I feel like let's take barbecue, for example. If you're in South Carolina or Texas or California, there's different styles of barbecue. Like here in California where I'm at, tri-tip is a big thing. But if you have tri-tip, you'll never find tri-tip in Texas or other areas because they think it's too dry. It's really a regional thing.
Yeah.
What about for desserts? When you go to different parts of the country or up into Canada, is there regional differences?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think, Canada has a ton of international influences. I was just in the Toronto area last week and had amazing Indian food that came with like this really delicious mango ice cream with rose water. And would we ever have that, in Colorado here where I am? I mean, maybe, but it was super fun. And they had the end of the meal came with like a very special palate cleanser as well. And so I think whether it's, the Toronto area or Vancouver has a ton of Asian influence with like matcha style desserts or like Japanese cheesecakes and things like that. Canada is very lucky to have such great international influence. And then, I do think that there's also a ton of regional differences in the United States as well. I just had a friend come back from St. Louis over the weekend and said, I had gooey butter cake. And that is something that, we love here as well. And, something that we make at Dessert Holdings. So it's like, it was really fun to hear, her say like, oh, I had this amazing dessert, and know that like that was something like super close to home, and that it really resonated with her. So yeah, I think there's definitely tons of regional plays out there.
Yeah, I'm sure. From what it sounds like, I know I'm sure it's very difficult and there are the tough days, but it sounds like you have a pretty fun job getting to try and sell desserts. That's got to be a lot of fun.
It is. It is super fun. Yeah, the days that something goes wrong and you think to yourself, like, did brownies just like sort of ruin my day today, is still comical. So yeah, it's definitely a fun industry.
On the brokers, I'm a food service broker,
Mm-hmm.
and on the broker side, a lot of times we will, if we go into an account, we'll say, hey, maybe can we cook? And so let's just say we're gonna cook a steak, right? Just throw it on the grill and you're gonna try right there. It wouldn't necessarily pre-make a steak. I guess I could, but kind of want the operator to try it right then and there. When it comes
Mm-hmm.
to baking, do you make sure that the products are, whether they're pre-slacked out or baked off before you go to the account, or do you like to do that process in front of the operator?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I feel like is really important in front of an operator is to show not only how to, maybe cut the cake, or, how to handle it. If you're pulling 5 slices a day and like slacking those out, how to maybe prepare for your day. But it's more so I like to work with the operator on how can we make this unique for you. So I typically, try to have the product slacked, and then, really get into, okay, we have this base cake. How do we make this super cool for you? Are we adding a dragon fruit sauce to it? Are we blending it up in a shake? Are we, just how, and being collaborative with the chef to say like, oh, we want to make sure it only has 3 steps to make sure that it goes really quickly. It needs to, be up and ready to serve within so many minutes, and making sure that we're working together to build a successful dessert that then could be presented to someone, in operations, and they could do some testing with it, and then hopefully it could become a menu item, right? So it's all about making sure that that they are excited about it, but also that it works, and that it's kind of foolproof for someone in the back of house who maybe has no training in pastry, right? So how do we make it super easy for them?
Sure. Do you see a lot nowadays of operations or chefs that were previously scratch bakers moving to more, whether it's a labor issue or cost issue, but moving more to a pre-made product?
Yeah, I think that's happening a lot right now. Yeah, to your points exactly. Ingredient cost is super high, especially on things, dairy and stuff like that you need when you bake. So I have seen a lot of that. And then it's just, we're the pros, right? So we can make cheesecake in our sleep. And, what's that risk to you as an operator? Are you looking at having a cheesecake that's cracked, or maybe it didn't get done enough? And then that's just a loss for you that day, right? So that's a good solution, having something that you can feel proud about. The ingredients are great in it, but it comes to you frozen, sliced, and ready to go. If you have all of a sudden a huge demand on cheesecake, well, you can just pull a few extra slices and they'll be ready to go, shortly. So you don't have that flexibility when, you're making it back of house. When you're out, you're out. So I do see some trending towards getting the labor part, the ingredient part. Both are big hurdles for operators right now.
Yeah. I remember when I first started in the food service sales industry or food service industry, I had somebody that was kind of a mentor, and he had been on the latter part of his career, and we had brought him into our company, and his segment that he really focused on was hotels. And I remember one of the very first hotels he took me to was this massive hotel, and the chef, it was a new chef, and he was a scratch chef. So everything from, the entree to the dessert was scratch made. And he said, I have these products and solutions maybe that'll help you out, because looking around, you only have so much labor, and to be a scratch chef like this and looking around the room not being very many people, you're not going to make it. I mean, it's going to be way too difficult. And sure enough, we went back to that same account a few months later, and that chef was no longer there. Couldn't keep up with the scratch. I think great intentions, but it was difficult to execute.
Yeah, definitely. I think that just happens sometimes. If you don't have the labor to help you execute, it can be a giant failure.
For sure. What about any new items that you have and that you're showing? Anything that you're really excited about?
Right now, we're really excited about soaked cakes. So we have a vanilla tres leches cake that came out in the last year or so. And I love this cake because it works in many ways. So it's sort of like an idea of like a cheesecake or something that's a great base, and you can change the sauces seasonally and things like that. So, but it's like this 2-layer cake with this dairy soak and then whipped cream in between the layers and on top. And it is just like this delicious vanilla, super clean tasting cake that you can use a lot of different ways. And even though it's, a soaked cake, so you think tres leches and it kind of has, you feel like it might stick into like a little bit of a hole. I really find that it works great in a lot of applications, and you can, whether you call it like a chantilly cake or a whipped cream cake or something like that, it works on a lot of menus. So that's something that we're really excited about right now. And then just taking that idea and kind of running with it. So we have, some new product that's coming out, and, if you're interested, you can call me about it, right? But it's like a cereal milk cake. So like an idea of that same soak, but it's like a cereal milk soak. So it's pretty fun. And so that's coming out soon. So yeah, that's kind of the fun stuff.
I like that. What's a cereal milk? When I think of cereal milk, I'm thinking, okay, I have a bowl of Lucky Charms with milk, and it essentially, the colors bleed into the milk and change colors. Is that what that is?
Yeah. So essentially, yes, a milk that has the flavor of the cereal that was left over, right? And then that's soaked into the cake, and then it's really colorful. So back to that, like Instagrammable, eye-catching things that go through the dining room. I think it's going to be a big hit. So yeah, that's we're out showing that in the next few weeks, and hopefully it'll come out soon.
That's exciting. When it comes to social media, you mentioned social media in the dessert category, I would imagine it's a good way for restaurants or operators to showcase their operation online. As here's this beautiful, soaked cake, or here's this great new ube product that we have, because it's colorful and people connect online. I'm sure that really helps drive business for these operators. And I'm sure for you, it's a selling point to help get people in the door.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, social media continues to be super inspirational for everyone. I think, we find inspiration from social media. We don't do a ton of posting on like a Instagram type. We have, our LinkedIn and things that, some of our core products are shown on, as well as our website that is, of course, full of beautiful images that kind of make your mouth water. And yes, exactly. It kind of gets you excited about dessert. So yes, I would agree.
I love that. Okay. What about the people or the students right now that are in college, or maybe somebody working in a restaurant, and they say, you know what, I want to get into or onto the manufacturing side, and I want to be on the sales side. What would be your advice to them?
I would say, I mean, it does take, back to earlier, I think I mentioned, being comfortable networking and being out in front of people. So, those are good skills to make sure that you have, or to polish if, public speaking isn't something that you love. There are going to be moments that you have to be out in front of people talking. So those are, I think historically, some restaurant chefs aren't always the people who love to be out in front of folks, right? So it is a bit of a different skill set there. But I feel like you should go down the path of whatever you're passionate about. So for me, working for a company that manufactures desserts is like, it's just like the perfect fit, right? Like I love dessert. I, am a pastry chef. It's easy for me to go sell dessert because I love it. So, do things that like you feel very passionate about, and it makes it easy to go out and sell that. So that would be, that would be my advice. And then just, continue to network and find, there's a lot of great resources out there through LinkedIn and things like that you can, I feel like people are always open for mentorship and guidance on like, how to connect you in a place that you want to be in and help you succeed. So
that's great. And what about for you, looking into the future, what would be the ultimate goal?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm not much of a, like, every day's a new day around here. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I would love to stay in the dessert world, and just continue to grow. And, our company has grown drastically over the last few years. And I think it's really fun to be in a company that has such growth because it makes it new all the time. Right. And I think that's probably the key, for me to find some happiness is like, make sure that it stays exciting. So, make sure that I'm passionate about whatever, and then that it remains exciting as time goes on. So, but yeah, I don't know, if you have a crystal ball, send it over.
Yeah, I know, there's one thing about the food service industry I've found. One, you don't pick it, it picks you. It somehow it presents itself in your life, and then it's hard to get out once you're in.
Yeah.
And there's so many twists and turns. I know on the broker side, it's before I started in the brokerage industry, it was a lot of independent brokers, and then they all became big, large national brokers. And now it's constantly evolving. And I think that's not just the broker industry, the distribution, the manufacturing, all different kinds. It's always changing. So you have to keep up, which is not easy to do.
Yeah, it keeps you on your toes for sure.
It definitely does. It definitely does. Well, Andrea, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me here on the Titans of Food Service podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation. But before we go, I have to ask, would you ever go back and own another bakery?
Maybe. Okay. If it included like a beach view, perhaps.
You know what? I live not too far from the beach, and there are a few bakeries right there by the water. Susie Cakes is a good one. And I think they're probably just local here in Orange County, but that's a great goal. I like that. Yeah. You gotta, I envision that I would want to have some sort of, reprieve at the end of the day. So, the water, a great sunset. Yeah. That West Coast life you have. That sounds awesome. Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining me here. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me. I know there's going to be a lot of people that this resonates with, and I think a lot of people are going to find this conversation very interesting. So thank you so much.